In this video, we're going to take a good look at customer refunds and exchanges. We're going to see how to refund money to a customer without receiving any goods back. We're going to see how to receive goods from the customer and then restock them, write them off, or put them in for repair or maybe quarantine. We're going to see how to refund the customer for any returned inventory. I'm going to show you how to create a payment on account for use against future sales orders if you're not going to send any goods back to the customer. And then we're going to look at exchanges, both when the goods are of the same value or when they're of higher or lower value than the goods you've received back. The first and simplest scenario is where you want to refund money back to a customer without receiving any goods from them. The process starts when the customer calls you up or sends you an email. What you need to do is you need to get their original sales order ID and then clone that sale to a sales credit. Then you need to remove the line items you don't need and add a text line for the refund. Then you need to capture any additional information and then refund the customer payment via your payment service provider, and then finally complete the sales credit in Brightpearl. At the time of recording, in January 2014, we're going through a change to the returns process. So to use the process we're looking at in this video, please get it activated on your account by emailing design@brightpearl.com. So let's see how that works in Brightpearl. The customer's given us an order ID, so let's pop that into the sales quick search box, which brings up their sales order. You can also search by invoice number or even their name. Drop into the sales order, where you can see it's actually the right one that you're looking for. And in this scenario, the customer's phoned up saying that it was damaged in transit, and what we want to do is simply refund $5. So we'll hover over the save button and then go clone to credit note. You could just create a credit note for the customer without the original sales order, but if you do that, you'll miss the link here that goes back to the parent, which is going to be useful for you in the future. Now we're not actually going to receive the goods back from the customer, so let's get rid of this line item, and then we'll simply add a row and describe why we're giving the refund. Choose an account code, and you might actually want to create one for refunds so that it's easier to track, and then put the amount you want to refund, and in this case it's just going to be $5. Now I actually want to refund him $5 including the tax, so let's set prices include tax, which will calculate it backwards for us. Save changes. I'll go across to my payment provider now, refund that $5 maybe back onto his PayPal account or onto his credit card, and then in Brightpearl click do refund. Record that you've made that payment. Let's say we put it back onto his credit card. We can now see that the total on the credit matches the amount paid back to the customer, and the last step to make sure all this goes into the accounting system properly is hit credit. So that's recorded that we've refunded the customer and it's closed the credit. At the top of the bank activity for the credit card account, we can see that the customer has been paid $5 and it relates to the sales credit ID. On the customer activity screen, which you can reach from financial history, you can see the two transactions we've created. So we've got the SC, the sales credit, and that was created when we actually credited that sales credit. And then we've got the sales receipt, which is the money that we refunded to the customer. And they both have got the same sales credit ID, which is automatically generated by Brightpearl, and the order ID that we've been working with. Next up, we're going to tackle something a little bit more complicated. This time, we're actually going to receive the goods back from the customer. As before, the first step is when the customer calls up or sends you an email. You need to get their original sales order ID, ask which items they would like to return, clone those items to a new sales credit, capture any additional information such as custom fields or reason for the return, and then finally email them an RMA or maybe a returns form, and on that form will be the information they need to send the goods back to you. The next step is when the goods arrive in your warehouse. They arrive hopefully with the RMA documentation you've sent to the customer, and then what you need to do is decide whether to A. restock the goods, B. write them off, so perhaps they've been damaged and you can't sell them again, or C. put them in for quarantine or repair. You then need to refund any payments relevant before finally closing or crediting the sales credit. Whether you send them replacement goods is covered later in the exchanges section of this video. Here's a sales order from a customer for 3 separate items: a shirt, a snowboard and some climbing trousers. They want to return the climbing trousers for a full refund, but they're going to keep the shirt and the snowboard. So what we do is we find our way to the sales order, either using their name or an order reference. We then tick the item that we want to return and then clone to sales credit. That creates a new sales credit, which you can see by the SC at the start of the order reference, and links it to the original parent sales order. The price the customer paid is being brought through here, and what we want to do is make a refund of that amount. At this point, you're still on the phone to the customer, so it's a good idea to capture any extra information that might help prevent more returns like this in the future. And what I've done is I've actually created a custom field tab called Returns with a number of fields within it. Reason for return, let's say it was carrier damaged. Any notes that you might want to take from the customer, and then later your warehouse will fill in this field, which is when the package was actually opened. Let's save changes to that sales credit and then send an email to the customer to tell them what to do next. So click email/print, and this opens by default the credit note template, which is not what we want. I've actually created an extra template called RMA, so let's choose that, which is instructions for the customer. We'll email this to them where they can see the returns authorization, the date at which it was issued, the reason for return, that custom field we just chose, the original sales order reference, the product they're returning, and then a section at the bottom that they can cut out and attach to the outside of the package. This again contains our sales credit ID. This makes it much easier for our warehouse team to deal with this package when it comes in. So let's email this off, which takes us back to the sales credit screen. I've created some statuses to help us see where in the process this is. So here's one called Awaiting Goods, and let's just choose that. This means that other staff can see that I've sent this and we're waiting for the goods to come back. A short while later, the package will arrive at your warehouse. Your warehouse team will need to find the sales credit, and you can just put the sales credit reference in the quick search box at the top right. Then what they need to do is check the goods and decide what to do with them. You need to click Receive Inventory, and here's where you're presented with a number of options. The first is to make these goods available for sale in the warehouse of your choice, and that'll put it straight back into stock. The second option is to write off these items, which is going to bring them back into stock and then immediately write them off again. And then the third option is to quarantine the items, which puts them onto a screen called Inventory in Transit, which you then release into stock later. In this example, let's just write off the items and let's just say that they're damaged. This marks the sales credit as fully received, so all inventory items have been dealt with. They've actually been written off as well, so they don't appear in stock. You can see the two inventory transactions that have just been made on the inventory audit trail. So here's one that's been put into stock and then immediately removed again. They both have got the same order reference, and the little 3 here indicates that it's a sales credit. The general ledger contains 2 accounting transactions that reflect those inventory movements. These both cancel each other out, so there's no change to your profit and loss or balance sheet, because you've already counted the cost of those goods when you sold them. To complete the process, we need to decide what to do with the funds or the finance. In this example, what I want to do is refund the customer. So I've created an order status here called Due Refund, because typically my warehouse staff don't have permission to make payments back to the customer. So we'll save that, and then another staff member will pick up the refund. What they'll do is they'll find all sales credits due for refund, they'd go into the payment system, make the refund, and then in Brightpearl click Do Refund, choose the bank account from which refunding, and then allocate payment. And the final step is to credit the sales credit. That completes all the accounting entries needed and updates the status of the credit to the one you've chosen in your settings under Sales, Credits Workflow. Now what we're going to do is receive goods back from a customer, but this time we're going to send them replacement items. So this customer Joe Townsend has placed an order for a red bobble hat in size large. However, he's decided that he doesn't want the large, he wants the medium. So let's create a sales credit for the large. We'll fill out the custom field so that the team knows why this is going to come back, and let's go customer error. Save changes. Email the RMA form off, and then update the credit to awaiting goods. Depending on how you run your business, you might choose to send the new items out straight away without waiting for these ones to come back. And in that case, we'd create a new sales order right away. If the new goods are exactly the same price as the old goods, what you could do is you could actually zero out the price on both the sales credit and the new sales order. Alternatively, you can leave the prices as they are and they'll cancel each other out if they're the same price. So let's create a new order for Joe, add the medium bubble hat, and we'd save the order and fulfill it as normal. Once it was fulfilled and shipped, we'd invoice it, which puts the £3 balance on the customer's account. We're not going to take payment from him because we're going to allocate the funds from the sales credit. If we go along to the Orders menu tab, we can see that there's actually the sales credit awaiting goods for this particular customer. So when the goods arrive, we choose what we want to do with them, and let's say in this particular example we're just going to restock them, and then finally we hit credit, which puts a minus $3 on the customer account and takes his accounting balance down to 0.
What we're going to look at now is the concept of quarantine. So that's receiving inventory but not putting it straight back in stock, so maybe you need to check it or repair it. Here's a sales credit and the customer wants to return a Cannondale bike hub. What we'll do is click Receive Inventory, choose to quarantine the items, and then Receive. This marks the sales credit as all received, and you can carry on just as normal to refund any payments. And it puts the inventory into a screen called Inventory in Transit, which you can get to from this link or from Products menu. Each warehouse has got its own quarantine location, and the warehouse it's received into is the one on the sales credit. This inventory does not show on any stock reports, it only shows on the Inventory in Transit and Inventory Audit Trail. As soon as you've received the goods into quarantine, an accounting transaction is made for the cost price of those goods based on the cost price list. That's going to increase your stock or inventory, which is a debit, and decrease or credit your cost of goods sold, which is actually going to increase the profit you report. What you need to do when you put them back into stock is to filter this report by a certain warehouse, even if you've just got the one warehouse, then select the items and release them into stock. If you've got multiple concurrent locations set up, then Brightpearl will ask you where you want to put the items. If you don't have multiple concurrent location, it'll just put the items in the default location for that product. So we've covered a lot of ground in this video. For more information, see our documentation at brightpearl.com/support. And that takes us to the end of the video, all about refunds and exchanges.